Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our Tropical Weather Outlook video for today, Thursday, June 12th, 2025. Today we're talking about potential tropical cyclone 4E in the Pacific, which could potentially bring impacts to Mexico this weekend, which is why the National Hurricane Center designated potential tropical cyclone 4E. Literally just hot off the press right now as of the 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time advisory. Here's the National Hurricane Center homepage. I'm literally bringing this information to you right as it's coming out. In fact, I was planning for this video and I was just going to do a regular tropical cyclone update video today, and then I got notification that the NHC is now doing advisories on PTC 4E in the Pacific. So here it is. The latest maximum sustained winds are 35 miles per hour, minimum central pressure of 1,006 millibars. If you're tracking it, it is located at 11.3 north and 102 and 100.2 west, and it is moving west-northwest at 7 miles per hour. This was Invest 93E, and most of the graphics that I have still say Invest 93E, but the National Hurricane Center designated PTC for just now, obviously because the storm is not yet a designatable or classifiable tropical storm, so we can't really give this a name yet, in which the next name in the Eastern Pacific will be Delilah, I think. But this storm will bring impacts to Mexico, as I'll show you right now with the 5-day forecast, which they just released. Tropical storm watches are in effect for portions of the Mexican coastline. This will stay out to sea, but it looks like it's not enough of its impacts will get close enough to land that they do have tropical storm watches in effect for the Mexican coastline. So again, I'm not sure exactly where. Let's actually see really quickly where the tropical storm watches are in effect for. Let's see if we could find them. Tecpan del Galena to Manzanillo, Mexico. Manzanillo, Mexico. Not sure if I pronounced that right, but I'm pretty sure Spanish speakers seeing the names would understand what I mean. But once again, tropical storm watch is in effect for the portions of the Mexican coastline. So we already reviewed that. Here's the latest satellite imagery of PTC 4E. I was about to say Invest 93E. Sorry, it's just all of this information is just new. I'm literally getting this hot off the press, as this information from the NHC came out just moments ago. You could see why, though, they did not go with an official tropical storm name yet for this system, because it clearly does not look like a tropical cyclone just yet. And that's what these PTC designations are for. We had them, of course, last year in the Atlantic, and I think we had a few in the Pacific as well. But the National Hurricane Center usually likes to designate these systems as a potential tropical cyclone if they are expected to bring impacts to land, even if they are not yet a fully designatable tropical storm. So that's why we have PTC 4E. But again, I showed you the National Hurricane Center forecast track. This will probably stay offshore in terms of its core. But as I always mention to you, and this is also very important for tracking, not just in this case specifically, but in general, a general rule of thumb with tracking hurricanes, the center of the storm, the center is only one point on the map. The impacts can extend for large areas outside of the center, and this is especially true when we have large, devastating hurricanes which come ashore. The impacts can sometimes be several hundred miles across in terms of tropical storm force winds, and of course several hundred miles long in terms of rainfall, wind threat, not just at the coast. The general thing I'm trying to convey to you here is even though this will stay out to sea, clearly there will be enough impacts that we could still get tropical storm conditions along the Mexican coastline this weekend. And then intensity-wise, this will probably be a strong tropical storm. At least that's what most of the model intensity guidance has. Some of them potentially say that this could maybe become another hurricane. Let's actually really quickly see what the forecast is by the National Hurricane Center. So pretty much in line with the intensity guidance, right at strong tropical storm intensity. They forecast a peak of 70 miles per hour. So maybe there's a chance that this could become a hurricane. Maybe there's a chance this could probably stay a strong tropical storm. Either way, we'll probably looks like we might have tropical storm conditions along the Mexican coastline. So once again, those in Mexico this weekend, if you are under a tropical storm watch, get away from the shoreline, stay indoors. Conditions will be rainy, gusty, windy. This probably won't be anything big, obviously, because it looks like this will, or at least the bulk of the storm will stay offshore, and this is probably not going to be a strong storm anyways. But regardless, it looks like it will be an impact, or will bring impacts of some sort to some land areas, and obviously that is a big deal in and of itself, even if it's not going to be a major, devastating, powerful hurricane. So we got that out of the way with the Pacific. Here's a quick satellite look at the Atlantic, and you can see nothing much happening right now. Very strong upper level winds cutting across the Atlantic with strong Saharan air being pumped off Africa. And obviously we have a few of these tropical waves in here. It looks like there's a wave approaching the Lesser Antilles. Although this obviously does not have any particular concern for development, at least for now. But it looks like we might have to watch the Caribbean and maybe the Bay of Campeche over the next week or so. Some of the models, namely models like the Euro and especially today the Canadian model, have really gotten on board with potentially a quick spin up within the next week or so, trying to develop from the Central American gyre pattern, as well as some of the energy from one of these tropical waves out here. And we might get some development in the Bay of Campeche in the near-term future. Obviously, the National Hurricane Center doesn't have anything highlighted yet, but the potential is there, at least if you want to believe some of the models from today. Obviously, still a lot up in the air right now, so nothing is for sure, but I'll show you the model in just a moment. Here's the 850 millibar vorticity. Obviously, you could see with our PTC here in the Pacific, very clear that is not a full-on tropical cyclone yet. Very, disorganized and broad vorticity here. It's not quite bundled up in a tight circle like we typically see, especially with well-defined, well-developed tropical systems, but that's probably going to happen very, very soon, and then this will go on to move off to the west-northwest, and once again, we'll probably have some tropical storm conditions this weekend along the Mexican coastline, but obviously in the Atlantic, nothing in the way of anything major developing for now. We do have some tropical waves in here. It looks like there's a pretty decent one coming off the coast of Africa, but at least in the near term, nothing for sure to develop. And I'll show you on the models here. At least in the Eastern Pacific, we have Invest 93E, which is now PTC4, that stays off the Mexican coastline. Once again, tropical storm watch is in effect, but that then moves away and moves off to the west-northwest without any direct landfall. And that'll happen over the next 5 days. And then out towards the next week, looks like the Eastern Pacific might quiet down a little bit, perhaps, as we start to turn things up in the Atlantic here a little bit. And let me switch over to the Western Atlantic frame of the GFS. And if this model can load, I'll show you here, well, this part in the Caribbean, you can see there's definitely some energy that the GFS tries to develop, although I wouldn't take this verbatim, at least in the Caribbean, because we know that the GFS tends to have a model bias with overdeveloping things in the Caribbean. But in the Gulf of Mexico, or at least the Bay of Campeche, you can see that this energy does persist. And we do try to see some consolidation of some sort in the Bay of Campeche. And this is roughly next weekend. So at the end of next week, heading on into next weekend, and you can see right there, especially as this low pressure comes on shore, late next week, something tries to develop, something tries to consolidate here. And I'll show you the Bay of Campeche. This is the climatologically favored areas for June. So I would not necessarily, completely write this off. Obviously, the GFS has its model biases, especially this part here in the Caribbean. I would completely discard it. Obviously, we're not going to get a well-developed tropical storm heading into Belize. Let's actually see how strong a system that is. 994 millibars, so that's probably a strong tropical storm. Probably not that happening, but we gotta watch to see whatever energy we have here in the Western Caribbean. Does it make it into the Bay of Campeche and try to consolidate as it moves into Mexico sometime, once again, late next week? And the reason why I'm especially interested today, because if this was just the GFS model showing this, as it has been for the past several days, because the GFS always tries to show development, especially with energy coming out of the Caribbean, we know it has its biases, but just to show you other models, take a look at this. This is the Canadian model as of the 12Z run today, and I actually saw this not too long ago. And look at that, a little bit earlier than the GFS, but also late next week, around 7 days from now, you could see they have vorticity trying to bundle. That definitely looks like a closed low-level center trying to consolidate here in the Bay of Campeche as this low pressure moves inland into Mexico late next week, and then maybe tries to head a little bit further north. I wouldn't put too much emphasis on where exactly the track might be, but the signal, I think that's the most important thing right now. And we have another model, the Canadian, indicating something. It's not just the GFS, and it's not just the Canadian too. Here are the European ensembles, because the actual European model takes freaking forever to load, especially the 12Z run. So I'm just going to use the ensembles for now. And look at that. There are some ensemble tracks in the Bay of Campeche. And funny enough, too, late next week, at least around this time frame, June 19th to June 20th, when we do have something that the Canadian and, really quickly, the GFS tries to show, and then they show, of course, their BS that they typically do coming out of the Caribbean. I wouldn't pay attention to it. I would pay attention to this, though, late next week. I find it very funny because this is the climatology table for when we typically get the date of the storm number for the Atlantic. So storm number 1 in the Atlantic, the typical climatological date for when we get that by, is June 20th. And funny enough, all of the models have, this is right on June 20th is when we're going to potentially watch this signal in the Bay of Campeche. And really quickly, from June 11th to June 20th, where are our typical points of origin in the Atlantic? Where do we typically see development? At least, where have we seen development between June 11th to June 20th in the Atlantic? All throughout the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, and especially here, quite a bit of development in the Bay of Campeche. Bottom line, we might have to watch something in the Atlantic very soon. The Atlantic might finally be coming to life, and our first named storm of the season might not be far ahead. It might not be that far into the future. Andrea may be arriving soon. We'll have to see. But at least in the shorter term than just the next week, within the next few days, we obviously have PTC 4E in the Pacific, and we're definitely going to be doing updates on that, especially since there are watches in effect. There looks like there might actually be some impacts. Nothing crazy, obviously, since this is only a tropical storm, but obviously it is still impacts. It's not nothing, and you shouldn't completely write it off. So I will be doing more updates. Probably tomorrow. I'll definitely have a video tomorrow. But if you want to see more consistent updates from me, I will be posting on YouTube. I will be posting on YouTube. I'll be posting on Twitter. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. Or if you want to call it X, you know, you can do that, but I still call it Twitter. I'll be posting tweets probably pretty often, or as often as I can throughout the day tomorrow. I'll definitely have a video out, at least one tomorrow, maybe two, depending on how things go. But it looks like we're going to have our next name storm here in the Pacific, and it looks like it might bring impacts. So definitely something to warrant for more updates, which we'll be doing. So stay tuned for that, and follow me on Twitter. Subscribe to me on YouTube if you haven't already. And if you found this video informative, please like this video, comment any thoughts you might have. And of course, if you do decide to subscribe, which I hope you do, turn on the notification bell so you can get videos the moment I upload them, especially if you are interested in information on PTC4E. Make sure that you are up to date and subscribe, please. I really do recommend it. With that being said, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Stay safe out there. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. I will be back with you with more information and another video very, very soon.